You guys in Illinois, west of here. I'll tell you, Ellie, you got to get all that stuff. Ellie's taking photographs here, but look at all this beautiful stuff that Scott brought in. Trees starting to turn
He brought
color.
a bouquet of leaves.
That's right. I'm going to make a bouquet out of it. Oh,
Look at a pawpaw.
Yeah, very. Oh wow.
she's good.
She knows
isn't
her trees. That is
Or
awesome. Some of
at
my-
least a pawpaw.
Yeah.
She knows her pawpaws.
These are some of my favorite friends I brought. Yes.
And that, as I said, is Scott Jamieson, Vice President of the Midwest Division of Bartlett Tree Experts. He covers Minneapolis, Chicago, Grand Rapids, Indianapolis, Columbus, Cincinnati, all those great cities.
Cleveland now too. We're in Cleveland. Yeah.
Wow.
Yay.
Great market. Yep.
We want to get in there. All right.
Yeah.
So if you guys listening online, get us into Cleveland so that we can help promote Bartlett Tree Experts, which is a wonderful tree care company. And of course, that means we're not just going to talk about riding bicycles across Kentucky and Tennessee, although that's part of it because it raises money for tree research. And that's why Scott and the other folks do that.
Totally.
So congratulations to you for making the journey and surviving it.
I think we raised over $370,000.
Wow.
For tree research this year. So it's their number one fundraiser. And it's not just writing and raising money. We're also doing community outreach. So along the way, we're planting trees. We're engaging the community. We had our last write-in back into Nashville. We stopped at a Montessori school, and the kids were waiting for us, and they came running down the hill, cheering us on. It was
The
was
tree
so
guys
cool.
are here.
Yeah, it was like riding into the Champs-Élysées in Paris at the end of the Tour de France.
Yay!
Yeah, it
Get
was
your
really cool.
pruning saws out. Okay.
It was great.
All right, which means we're talking trees today. So get your questions in 877-711-5611 or on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever. Instagram, sure. Ellie will take a look at Instagram. We'll even get to that. And we're going to answer as many as we can. Fall's coming. It's fun. The Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Peggy. McHenry County's largest
Okay,
Okay.
good.
Okay, and
It
as I
seems to be working. What do you mean on
and yes,
Ellie's
the
going,
holiday
Yeah.
don't listen to
it'll
him.
make sense. It'll make sense. But I'm still hearing.
Everybody knows except the show host what's going on. That's
Yeah. But I'm still hearing Scott louder than Mike.
I'm over modulating, as they say,
Mike's undermodulating.
Yeah. which is hard to believe.
Well, Andrew says it sounds the same, but in my headset, you're not as loud as Scott, so. Oh boy.
Gotcha. Speaking of trees.
Come out now to pick out your container or B&B trees. Call 815.
And saying good morning to everybody on Facebook. Joey, Dean, Don, John, Tom, Scott Stewart, Nick.
Scott Stewart's in the house. Wow.
Scott.
Landscape projects. Go to richesfoxwillowpines.com for more information. Follow them on Facebook for updates. richesfoxwillowpines.com.
Know someone with a drug or alcohol problem? Get help within 24 hours. Insurance may cover everything. Stop the drug and alcohol nightmare. Call 800-296-1554.
Welcome back to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. This is not old school, it's new school. I'm going to have to try to follow the show on my phone. That's going to be dangerous. But it's probably just as easy as using the computer because the computer's usually so slow here. Of course, it's not loading at all here, so we won't worry about that at the moment. Hey, we're very happy to have in the studio today Scott Jamieson from Bartlett Tree Experts. And I need to put this up here to let him know that if you get out of hand, we can control that with voices that come out of the air.
Come on, jerk. Seriously?
All right. So we'll just
And you can blame the
so
Will
appropriate.
County Forest Preserve District for that too.
yeah, that's from the they're Don't Be a Jerk series, Will County Forest Preserve District, and they're really cool videos. So I'll let people know that they're there. But we're here to answer your tree care questions, and so I'll just go right to you, Scott, because I do have a couple of questions, and then I'm sure we will get some as the show goes on. But what did you hope to show this morning with your wide array here and variety of tree leaves and branches?
Well, this is the time of year. Obviously, trees are like shutting down and getting ready for the winter. As I was driving over this morning, I think this is peak week. Everybody wants to know, hey, when's the peak day for color? I think we're heading into the peak week. But it's also a good chance to see what trees are doing, and those that have perhaps some problems that may look alarming but aren't. And so I've got a couple of things here. One of the things we're seeing right now on silver maples especially is something called tar spot. And it looks like blobs of tar on the leaves of these trees, and it can be very alarming. People are like, oh my gosh. And the reality is it's just a fungus that hits late in the season, and when we have diseases that hit late in the season on the leaves, we don't worry about it. Why? Because the leaves are dropping off. So it's not a concern, although it looks really bad and ugly. Absolutely nothing to do for this disease.
Here's the problem. As you say, it looks really bad and ugly. This is last year, right? I was at a garden talk, and I had a woman come up to me and say, hey, what can you do about we've got all these black spots. I said, oh, that's probably tar spot.
Yep.
And she says, they're on all the trees in the neighborhood. And I said, what are all the trees in the neighborhood? And she said, silver maples.
Yeah.
And I said, okay.
That explains it.
Yeah. And she said, well, one of our neighbors got really mad, and so she took care of it. And I said, what do you mean? She cut down her trees. And I said, that's crazy.
Right.
Because it doesn't put the tree in danger. It looks bad.
Right.
But it comes later in the season,
right.
too.
Well,
doesn't
and I know you've talked in the past about apple scab and crab apples, and that's,
Sure.
this time of year, actually probably a month or so ago, we really started seeing the leaves drop on crab apples that are very susceptible to apple scab disease. And if they're not treated, and they can be treated in a very safe, environmentally friendly way to protect those trees from apple scab disease. But, a lot of people mistaking that for a dead tree, and they'll cut the tree down, when in fact it's not.
Well, but that's okay. Let's go there for a second, Scott,
I know you
because
like this, yeah, I
no,
know.
and I'm not going to debate you on this. Because I have said to people, and I've said on the show, and when some of the Bartlett arborists are here, that you could save yourself a lot of heartache and headache by cutting down a scab attracting apple tree and put one up that's a resistant variety. And I did that. I didn't have the scab one. I just have an apple tree that's a resistant variety in my yard.
Mm-hmm.
I never have any problems with it, and it looks great right now. It'll lose its leaves, and it's got all the crab apples on it right now, and then the birds begin to feast on it.
Right.
But you're saying you can actually treat that. If you don't want to lose that tree, there are ways you can deal with it, and it's not harmful to the environment.
Exactly. I mean, the fungicides that are out there today are as environmentally friendly as they can be, and yeah, where we find ourselves treating those trees, they're the big, old, beautiful crab apples. Almost all are pink variety. That was
right.
That was the one that was most susceptible. But even today, some of the quote resistant ones are just that, resistant, and when the disease pressure is very heavy, they'll still get apple scab disease. And so we don't recommend treating all crab apples, but the ones that are prone to that disease. And I've seen some beautiful trees that if you just put a couple of applications on there, they would be awesome during the year.
So again, as I tell people, call your arborist, your local arborist, and in this case, Bartlett Tree Experts. Go to bartlett.com. And have them come out and give you some advice, because that's the other thing you guys do really well.
Right, absolutely. We are still the only doctors that make house calls, so we got to go out and look at the trees. People can bring samples like I brought in today, but really the best thing is to go out and look at the tree and its environment and see what's going on around it, because it's not always just some pathogen or insect. It could be the soil. In fact, we know 90% of issues with trees are below ground and in the environment that they're in. I did bring another leaf disease. This is rather uncommon because not many people plant aspen trees around here, but I've got a couple aspens in my yard, and it gets this Marsonia disease. That's it's just another leaf spot disease, but this one can be really bad. And if I have it treated by Bartlett, we treat this 5 times a year, believe it or not.
Imagine that.
I know, but this tree would be defoliated by early July if I didn't treat this leaf disease. So that's the case where I'm not going to cut down these 40 8-foot aspen trees. They're gorgeous. I
Did you plant them?
Yeah, I planted them. I bought them from Connor Shaw when my daughter was 1 year old. She was in the back seat in a car seat. I took the van down there. Connor sold me these 2 beautiful aspen trees. I shoved them into the van. They were 8 feet tall, I think, at the time. Now they're 40 feet. And this was 22 years ago.
Are those the ones that are out front?
That I light a lot. Yeah,
yeah. He lights them up for the holidays, and they're spectacular.
Yeah.
But does that indicate that aspens have a harder time here in this particular part of the country?
Well, they do. That tree grows like crazy. But what's interesting, it doesn't. What are aspens known for in the Colorado Rockies? This beautiful, clear yellow color.
Yellow.
And
Right.
these
When you
trees
fly over the Rockies
Right.
and you see
and
them.
one of the first to turn. Well, my aspens never turn that color. And talking to Connor, same thing. They don't get that vibrant yellow color here, and we think it's soil related, probably temperature related as well. They'll turn a color, but not like you see out west. But they're very hardy trees, and then they rustle in the wind. In fact, I'm reminded as I touch the petiole here, which is that little piece that attaches to the branch. It's flat, and that allows it to flutter in the wind like that. It's almost like a little sail.
it just
cause
gets
that. Where
they're
most
beautiful when
yeah.
you look at the trees. Yeah.
Most of those petioles are round, but the aspen is one of the ones that is really flat, and it acts like a little wind sculpture.
And you actually bring up a really good point with that, and that is planting trees outside of their native range.
Right.
And it can be done. Obviously, lots of people do it. Up here, well, there's all kinds of things that trees that people want to plant. What do you tell people when they're planting something outside of the native range?
Well, again, you gotta know where you're gonna site it, because there's trees that are gonna be planted outside its native range, but be in a microclimate on your property that maybe mimics that native range.
Sure.
And I brought a birch today. This is a sweet birch, betulenta, that I have in my yard. And birches white birches specifically are the ones that are often planted out of their range here, right? So these are white bark birches that grow native in northern Michigan, northern Wisconsin. They do quite well there, but you bring them down to the heat and the poor clay soils we have there, they get stressed and they get very susceptible to bronze birch borer, which wipes them out. This is a great alternative. It's not a white bark birch. It's actually like a cinnamon red-colored cherry bark that's absolutely beautiful. It's sweet birch. It's got if you rub the bark with your fingernail, you can smell this wintergreen. And you can make teas and things out of it. But this is just a fall beautiful yellow color that it's getting right now in my yard. But one of the best birches out there, just grows crazy. I don't have to do anything to it.
All right, I'm gonna come around here. Can we? Oh, there we go. So you can see a little bit of this. I'll try not to cover your face. And
Those are the catkins.
Yeah,
The
catkins,
seeds.
catkins,
The
yeah.
seeds that come from the catkins.
really
yeah.
nice catkins.
And that's in your yard?
Yep. Beautiful
All right,
tree.
now do I get to scratch it and see if I?
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
I was
so
going to say,
you can see if you can.
we'll all be at Scott's yard
smell some
scratching the trees
yeah,
and
yeah.
Oh,
sniffing.
It does.
Yeah.
That's a great smell. You got to try that, Peggy.
Yep.
For you folks at home, turn
we're
your
sniffing
your
trees.
smell-o-vision.
turn to smell-o-vision. Right,
Wow.
smell-o-rama.
Wow.
Isn't
that's
that amazing?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So,
So that the
you're
trees, but trees, I just say, planted outside of their native zone can do quite fine. But it's how it's sited. And again, best thing, call an arborist, good landscape architect or landscape professional that might be planting in your yard would know some of these things. I've seen some great trees that shouldn't grow here do extremely well if
Yeah.
it's in the right microclimate. The trouble is that if it gets a bad winter or something changes, boom, in one season or one winter, that thing can get blasted out.
yeah, and of course you're an arborist, so you're pushing the envelope. You want to see how these things perform, which is going to help you with your clients as well, I would imagine.
Right, exactly.
Because you've got the examples right there and can talk about it.
The other one I've got this is my favorite tree. This is the chinkapin oak.
Oh yeah.
And it's got a nice the oaks are just starting to turn, which always to me signals toward the end of the fall season. They're the last to change colors, and it's got this nice reddish brown color going. But the chinkapin oak is native. It grows very well on our
When you
high
say
pitched-
native to North America or this particular part of the
native
country?
this part of the country, yeah.
Yeah.
And it grows well in very alkaline soils, which most of our soils are.
Ah, see,
So,
now there's an issue. A lot of our friends listening in various parts of the country, heck, you can just go over to Michigan and you've got acidic soils there in parts of it. I mean, it kind of depends where you are, but here in our area, we're always dealing with alkaline soil. So I laugh when people say, well, you got to lime your soil because that's something we don't need here. But a lot of places in the country do.
Right, exactly. You mentioned Southwest Michigan. I got a message the other day from one of my good friends, Doug Hare, one of the best landscape architects in the world, and he wanted to know if we recommend planting beech trees in Michigan. And there's some problems evolving with native beech trees, and the beeches do grow naturally over in that southwestern part of Michigan. Sandy soils, a good microclimate. You bring a beech tree here, very difficult for it to grow. Our clay soils, some of our climate here in the Chicago area isn't conducive to growing beeches. But in Southwest Michigan, I said, yeah, Doug, go ahead, continue planting beech trees over there.
Although we have some in Millennium Park.
Yes, yeah.
In the shoulder hedge at the Lurie Garden, there are some beeches, I believe.
Yes, and they're well maintained. They're in like a little microclimate there, right?
And they probably
protected.
have perfect soil, I would imagine, because that soil is. Folks, if you ever come to Chicago and you go to Millennium Park, go to the Lurie Garden because it's actually a rooftop garden. It is a garden that's above an underground parking garage, and it is one of the most fantastic gardens in the world. We saw Scott Stewart's listening, so Scott, waving out to you. Text us or send us something on Facebook. How many visitors are you getting per year? There was a story recently, I think in the Sun. It might have been I think Detroit Free Press, that said that there were 10 million visitors a year, and somebody who works at the garden said, I think that's a little high. We don't know. But the point is, millions of people are coming to Chicago to see that garden because it's so beautiful, and it has become worldwide a game changer.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one of the most, it is one of the most visited, if not the most visited garden in the country. And I know Scott is always trying to get a handle on how many visitors because they don't have gate attendants or there are ways to track those crowds. But I've heard that $10 million or 10 million person figure as well.
So, and I can understand the folks that work there want to be conservative about it. They don't want to go making claims that aren't true. But as you say, it's really hard to tell how many people are there.
Well, and there's nothing more dramatic, especially in the Lurie Garden section of Millennium Park, which is, again, a world-renowned garden, to stand there and look to the north and see the skyline of Chicago. You're truly in a garden in a city. I mean, it's just amazing to have that perspective. And there's some really cool plants in there that have been sited the right way, like beeches that do quite well.
That was my point, is that it's got the right soil, it's got the right climate,
and
right
the right
there,
care.
And the right care.
And Scott just wrote, it's 24.5 acres is all rooftop park.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Amazing. Where did he pop that on?
That's on the watch party on your personal page. I am literally watching 4 Facebook pages right now.
Because I'm looking at the Facebook and I go, I don't see anything here, but it's at the watch party on my personal page. Okay, I'm not going to go fooling around. Who cares?
That's why my computer's here.
All right. So you can do it, but you got to be careful because one of the things we're losing right now are some of our conifers. Well, we've talked on the program about Norway maples and Colorado.
Blue spruces.
Not Norway maples, spruces.
Blue spruce. Yeah.
Blue spruces, and those are trees that are having some problems around here, aren't they?
Yeah, conifers in general. Our folks at the Bartlett Research Labs have been doing a lot of work around this because it's not just here in the Midwest, but also on the East Coast. And there's no question. A lot of the researchers say this is attributed to some of the climate change issues that we see with increasing temperatures. And again, Colorado blue spruce is actually a zone 3 plant, so it should be planted way north. It occurs naturally in Colorado at high altitudes, cool temperatures, but it has become a known plant to plant in the Midwest.
But also it needs really nice draining soil.
It doesn't do well in the clay soils that we have here. And so anyway, we're seeing a lot of complexes of different diseases. Needle cast is the one right now that's devastating, and it's a disease, a fungus disease that hits the needles of the trees, and it's related to this whole stress complex. And so again, it can be treated, and we don't just spray it, but we have a whole regime that we work to take care of the plants. But the issue is, if these plants weren't as stressed as they are, they wouldn't be having this disease issue that we see right now.
And as you say, it is somewhat related. It's related to site where their natural ranges, but climate change plays a part in this as well.
Yeah, increasing temperatures. Yeah, exactly. And drought. The spruces typically like it cool and moist. That's what they like to grow in, and we typically don't see that in our summers here anymore.
Okay. We got a couple of minutes, so we're going to break. You've got one more. Well, you've got a bunch there.
And when we come back, we've got at least 2 questions that have come in for Scott.
Oh, okay. We'll start. It is, by the way, this is Stump the Scott today on
pun
the mic.
intended, yeah.
No,
Stump, yeah.
Oh, I know, of course.
Right.
So we'll see you.
Leaf it to Mike.
Oh, okay. All right. And when you say that, you're going to get a response.
What a jerk.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. One more quick over there.
You want me to opine about the arborvitae here?
Yeah, let's branch out
yeah.
into something else, please.
So one of the things that we
Stop
see.
it, everybody! Just stop it.
We often get a lot of calls this time of year about my conifer, whether it's a pine tree or in this case I have an arborvitae, where the needles are yellowing up, but back off the tips. So in this case here, what we're seeing is if you have an arborvitae hedge or a pine tree, often you'll see needles starting to yellow this time of year, but back inside the plant. That's just fall for a conifer. It's dropping its needles. So my arborvitae hedge right now, the tips are nice and green, but inside we're getting some yellow foliage, and that's going to fall off. And if you notice, pine trees and arborvitaes, they're not green all the way back. They drop their needles too.
Yeah, that's
It's all natural.
Yeah, they have the dead zone on the inside of a plant.
Right.
So there you go. Look at he's even doing the.
He's doing his Vanna there.
Okay, that is Scott Jamieson from Bartlett Tree Experts. Go to bartlett.com and stick around with the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. We're going to stump the Scott next.
Here we go.
City Grange, Chicago's newest and most unique garden center, wants to remove all barriers to your
Yeah, that's
I'm impressed you knew the pawpaws. Like, wow.
Yeah,
You guys are the real deal here.
I have 2 in my front yard.
Oh, do you really? Yeah. Did you get fruit?
No.
All right, so I got 25 pounds of pawpaw fruit
Wow.
last year. This year I got like a pound.
Nothing.
And we believe pawpaws, like a lot of plants, will cycle. The fruit.
Yeah.
But yeah, last year I had a bowl of pawpaws. It was
Wow.
unbelievable. And yeah, the key is to get them before the raccoons and possums get up there and eat them.
I had for the first time ever, I had 1 or 2 flowers, and I think the squirrels got them. They were just gone.
Oh.
Poof, gone. But,
Well, with the pawpaw, you need a male and a female
right.
plant. That's one of the 2 that have to actually. And again, I got this from Connor Shaw. We were driving through his field, and there's these really crappy looking discards. He was going to throw them out. I said, "Can I have that?" He goes, "Yeah." And he throws them in, and it was a clump, and there was a male and female, unbeknownst to us, in that clump. And so that's now what causes
Perfect.
this
Yeah.
great
That's
crop
a great
every year.
story.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
You folks on Facebook are getting a little extra here learning about that.
Yeah, my trees aren't big enough yet, but
Yeah.
Perhaps it would be okay to buy it from just anyone. But this is not just any car.
and actually since the maple was trimmed up a lot,
Every detail has
the one that's got the most sun really took off
Oh,
this
yeah,
year.
yeah.
So
technicians, and it's all back
Kind of maple. Norway?
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's huge and shady, and it would be missed if it weren't there.
certified pre-owned sales event going on now.
So
they
so this
service
tree
those.
company I know
Today, enjoy a credit of up to
recabled it this year.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mercedes-Benz Financial Services. Because in the end, it's absolute confidence.
You know
and
she's
genuine
talking about your company.
I assume. Thank you.
It's either Mercedes-Benz certified pre-owned.
Well, I didn't want him to get all honked off at us and say, what tree company has she got?
Complete details and limitations on credit towards your first 2 months' payment and certified pre-owned warranties.
Hey, everybody, thanks for joining us on Open
Road
Radio on Smart Talk, WCGO, AM and FM.
1, 2, 3.
Welcome back to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki, and it is indeed good to be alive. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and we've got our arborist friend here in studio, the man himself, Scott Jamieson, and we're playing a little bit Stump the Scott here with your tree care questions. Again, 877-711-5611. However, they're coming in on Facebook, these are shy people. They don't want to get on the phone.
No, it's
this is
all
21st
social media.
century. So yeah, social media is it.
I haven't even checked the Twitter machine. So
Maybe I should. So while you're, why don't you give us a question for Scott?
Okay, so Tracy writes in to say, are galls harmful to a young 4 to 5 year old oak tree? Nearly every acorn is a gall in my chinkapin oak this fall.
Oh, yeah, I get the same thing with my chinkapin oaks. No, it's not a problem for the tree at all. It doesn't hurt its health. I'm not sure what causes it. It's probably an insect that kind of stings it and injects something in there and causes the acorn to be deformed, and that's what a gall is. It's almost similar to human medicine, like a tumor, where the cells grow in an abnormal way and can create these round gall-looking things. So not an issue. Chinkapin oaks, though, it's interesting. It's the number one favorite acorn by squirrels. And in fact, I saw that in a recent poll. Yeah.
9 out of 10 squirrels approve
Exactly.
the chinkapin.
Yeah, they're raising their tails in approval. But it's true. You can't. My tree produces a lot of acorns, but the squirrels get them almost as soon as they start developing. Evidently, it's a very sweet acorn. They love it. The good thing is you don't have the acorn mess under the tree, but the bad thing is you don't get to see these really cool acorns because the squirrels just devour them. So the galls aren't an issue. In general, you get galls on leaves and on stems, and typically those aren't anything that you need to be concerned about.
Okay. The next question is from Zan. She wonders, is it too late to plant a tree, especially a pear tree?
Ooh,
I think when you get into fruit trees, it's interesting because I was trying to help somebody I want to say a month ago actually, get a peach tree, and then then we had Orrin Martin on our show recently, and I read his book. He's got a wonderful book out about growing fruit trees. And they tell you to be careful in the fall. That he says you probably want to hit the ground running in the spring. Yeah. First of all, you're going to have a hard time finding them at this time of year. Peaches, especially, don't even try it at this time of year. Pear, I'm not so sure, but I would suspect that, again, that spring is going to be a better time, according to what he had to say in his book.
Yeah, that's generally our recommendation. You can certainly plant in the fall, but Mike's right. It's hard to find good stock. This kind of everything that's out there now is kind of left over.
Yeah.
So spring is typically our recommendations for planting. And I don't know if it's an ornamental pear or a fruit production pear.
Oh, well, if it's not a fruit production pear, I'm going to say, why are you planting a pear?
Yeah, those aren't
She didn't say. She just said specifically a pear.
Those aren't our favorite species. Although there are some newer varieties in pear of the ornamental pear that are fine. But short answer is you can plant in the fall. You just want to make sure there's adequate moisture, which we've had. You want to mulch it so that soil stays a little bit warmer around that root ball to encourage some root growth. And that's the issue, is that oftentimes the soil temperatures will drop fairly quickly. You won't get good root establishment. And so that tree kind of sits there in that root ball during the wintertime. And if you mulch it, it's fine. You can plant in the fall, but we do prefer the spring.
But the fall is generally, again, if we're not talking fruit tree production, it's not a bad time to get a tree in the ground because, as you pointed out, the roots continue to grow, but it's not busy with leaf activity, and so it can all focus on the roots.
Exactly.
And we know here that even if it gets cold, the air gets cold down in the 30s, the ground's going to be warmer. So, but let's get real quickly back to calorie pears, okay? Because in some parts of the country, they're a scourge. They have gotten out of their bounds. I went to, and I've talked about it on the show before, but several years ago went to an invasive plant seminar at the Chicago Botanic Garden. And they spent half the day talking about calorie pears. And you mentioned that some of them aren't, but what they've discovered, at least what I learned from that conference, is you can get a variety that is sterile. And I'm using air quotes here, okay? It's sterile.
Theoretically.
So it's not going to combine with its own variety, but a different variety that is also sterile might come together with that, and now they're releasing seeds, and the calorie pear is spreading, and they're all over Logan Square where I live, because on the parkway there in the spring it's all white blooms and it's all the calorie pears. Do yourself a favor and maybe back off from that, because too many municipalities, well, I guess I would say more homeowners, because I don't know if the municipalities are purchasing those trees. Do you, Scott?
No, not a whole lot. Most of them taking them off their list because of what you said.
Yeah. What other trees would you say?
Well, I'll just to stick on the calorie pear, because it has a soft spot in my heart for one reason, and this is the survivor tree at the 9/11 National Memorial, which you may know about. This was the tree that was pulled out of the rubble by the New York recovery team back in the day. And they found this Calorie pear. They put it in a park in New York City, and the park department took care of that. And so now it's on the plaza. It's known as the Survivor Tree. And Bartlett takes care of it. We also have a program with the John Bound School, which is a agricultural-based high school in Queens, where we take cuttings and we actually propagate that tree. And there are seedlings of Calorie pear. It kind of goes against all the other rationale around this, but it is a survivor tree, and it has a special place in our heart. And so there are survivor tree seedlings around the United States at other 9/11 memorials. In fact, when we did the Tour de Trees in Wisconsin a few years ago, we stopped in Green Bay and we actually dedicated a 9/11 memorial tree. They have a 9/11 memorial in downtown Green Bay, and we planted one of those survivor trees there.
And you bring up a really important point about trees. There's emotions involved with owning a tree and caring for a tree because, as I say in one of the commercials for Bartlett, they're part of the family.
Right.
And so even though this is a tree that is not, boy, don't you wish a chinkapin oak had survived instead of a Calorie pear?
Well, there is another survivor tree. It's the Oklahoma City bombing survivor tree in Oklahoma City. And I got to visit that memorial a couple years ago for the first time. If you're ever in Oklahoma City, go to that site. It's one of the most well-done memorials I've ever seen. And there is an American elm that is the survivor tree. And the story on that tree was when the Murrow building went down and the explosion happened, a lot of things were, there was this crappy elm tree in the parking lot. Nobody ever paid attention to it. The FBI wanted to cut it down and do forensics on it because it had a lot of things from the building into the tree. They left it alone. They forgot about it. And then the next spring, that tree blossomed out, leafed out, and it was beautiful. And they said, hey, this is the survivor tree. So the entire memorial is built around this American elm. And there's all sorts of cuttings and things for that tree. It's very difficult to get an Oklahoma City survivor tree. You have to be kind of related to those that lost their lives to get one of those seedlings. But it's a beautiful American elm.
I was not aware of that one. That's a great story.
So we have another question.
Sure, go for it.
As well as Zan says, yes, that is a fruit pear.
Okay, good.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, so wait till spring.
Soil
Okay.
and plant health don't stop.
Whoa.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, we have Christine Nye has now hopped in.
Oh, boy.
Uh-oh. She says
She wants to stump the Scott.
Yeah, she'll do it too. She's awesome.
She says, what can be done to eliminate chlorosis in red maples growing in our area? Part 2, is it from soil pH?
It is. So the red maples get this chlorosis, which is a yellowing of the leaf, and typically that's due to the alkaline soils. And a lot of times it was often associated with iron, but more recent research says it's manganese. And so it's a combination of nutrients. But at the end of the day, it's this alkaline soil issue. And you can acidify the soil, that helps. You can inject nutrients into the stem, that also helps. But the best thing is having the soil dealt with in such a way that it is not as alkaline.
A right tree in the right place.
Right tree in the right place. And,
Yeah.
the true red maple will have that. Some of the varieties, in fact, my neighbor has a Freeman maple, which is a cross between the reds and the silvers. And it's just
very popular these
stunningly
days, right?
beautiful.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know if it's overplanted yet. I don't see a lot of them. But
that's the problem. We get these trees, we love them. And I think honey locusts are overplanted myself.
Well, I remember when Mayor Daley put a moratorium on planting honey locusts. It probably doesn't exist anymore, but that was because that was the very much overplanted tree in the city and started to develop issues.
Anybody we know, do you think, put a bug in his ear about that one?
Yeah,
Maybe
who knows?
Susan Malik McKenna or somebody.
I have a great quick story on trees. When the city got really more progressive, and guys like Joe McCarthy in the city of Chicago was behind planting a lot of cool trees, they planted a bunch of Kentucky coffee trees in the medians, the medians of the city. And I went by there and said, "Oh, that's awesome!" And I call up Joe, "Great job on the coffee tree." Literally a week later, I go by, they had been swapped out for honey locusts. I'm like, "What's going on?" He goes, "Mayor didn't like those trees." And it was because the coffee trees look like coat racks in the wintertime. They don't have much branching.
Well, when they're young.
Yeah, and so the mayor, and he was well-meaning, and he was like, "I don't like the look of those trees." And they repurposed them. They put them somewhere else. But it was an age and era where the mayor was really dialed into trees.
And I
It's
know
pretty
that
cool.
story because I've told that story too. Except you got to when you do it, you got to do the Richie Daley line. I don't like those trees. Let's get those trees out of here. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, they look like a coat rack. What is that? What is that tree? I don't want that.
Much better.
Sorry. Hey, let me ask you. I have a question. Can I get a question
Yep,
in here?
yep. There's a lull right now. So.
Okay. the question I have, because I got it at a garden talk, and I think I wrote to you about this. A woman said the tree leaves seem to be turning color very slowly this year, and and my guess was that it's because the trees are happy. Is that they've had a lot of water and the chlorophyll
Yes.
is still doing its job. The leaf color is still green, and they're just saying, "Hey, let's manufacture as much energy as we can while we have it." And then I talked to my buddy Dan Donnelly at North Shore Country Club just the other day, because he does some great stuff there with compost and biochar and things at this golf course. And I asked him the same question, and I told him what I thought it was, is that it was the rain. And he said, "Yeah, I think you're right." What do you think?
Yeah, that could be every year we ask that question. Is it early, is it late? Is it going to be a spectacular fall? I think it's kind of on track, but there's no question that when a number of things trigger fall color. Stress is one of them. And when you see premature fall color, it's almost always because that tree is stressed. Morton Arboretum just put out their fall color report for last week, and they said, hey, if you want to see some early fall color, go to the parking lot at the Arboretum, because those are the trees that are more stressed, and they're going to color up first.
That's really interesting.
And again, the whole process of coloring, right? You've probably talked about this. Is the green in a leaf is caused by chlorophyll. That's that's what creates the sugars and all that. But that's a pigment that goes away really quickly when the tree stops producing it. And the underlying colors of orange and yellow are really what makes the basis of the color of leaf. So when that chlorophyll disappears and it stops being produced, such as when a tree is under stress, then you start to see these other colors come out.
And so the advice is go to the Morton Arboretum and sit in your car in the parking.
No, watch those stress trees. Yeah,
I know. But turn off your car, because it'll stress them even more.
Right.
All right. I don't know if are we cool, Andrew? All right. More questions with Scott Jamieson from Bartlett Tree Experts.
Soil and plant.
Okay. So we'll be back on schedule, I hope. All right.
Uh-oh, Scott Stewart just came in with a question too now. So. Stump the Scott.
Hey, which Scott, though? Which Scott are we talking about when we're stumping the Scott?
Scott Stewart's pretty sharp.
Yes, he is.
Dr. Stewart. He's a doctor.
When are you getting your PhD?
Yeah. Window is passed.
Oh,
Yeah.
Boy, he's got a question for you.
Oh, he does?
Oh,
It's a
okay.
two-parter.
Tip it and go right to Pawpaw if you want.
Yeah. I'll pivot, as they say. I will pivot on that question.
What? Yeah.
Oh, did I say something wrong?
Yeah, no, we had to bleep out that whole last section because of you, Scott.
Okay, thanks.
Could you send us the other arborists? They know what they're doing here.
Sorry, good. Third rate.
No, you're great. I appreciate
Third rate
this.
arborist here, like third rate politician. Yeah.
I'm just looking at the...
That's a hornbeam versus a hop hornbeam.
Oh,
The
cool.
hops of a hop hornbeam, and this is a hornbeam, which is just different fruiting structures this time of year. Oh my gosh. Frozen robins.
Exquisite harmonies, madcap improvisation, holiday sketches and characters, even a 10-minute version of It's a Wonderful Life. They are definitely not your mother's carols.
What? Ellie.
Go to frozenrobins.com or contact me, Mike, at MikeNovak.net, because I'm not just a fan of the Frozen Robins, I are one.
Gardening, the environment, and green living.
It's the Mike Nowak Show.
With Peggy Malecki.
On WCGO Radio.
1590 AM and 95.9 FM.
Yes.
You see, we have the odd couple here today, and that's in studio Scott Jamieson, and on Facebook Scott Stewart. So it's the two Scotts,
There
which
you
I think
go.
is a new TV show.
Great Scott.
Great Scott.
Yeah, there we go. And because Scott Stewart, now Scott Stewart works at, folks should know, for those who don't know Scott Stewart, and I'm not going to remember his exact title. Do you know what it?
I think he's executive director of the Millennium Park Foundation, which
I believe that's
oversees the
it,
entire thing. It's a big deal.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
He is
no,
a-
he-
Yes, his
he-
Facebook page says executive director at Millennium Park Foundation.
Got it right. Thank you. That's
You
good.
are. you.
And it's Dr. Scott Stewart. He is very, very well known, renowned plantsman as well as being executive director. So does he have a?
Oh dear.
No, I would never say this about Scott Stewart.
What a jerk.
All right, no, I wouldn't do that. So he's got another question, and
Yes,
he
he
wants
says.
he wants to trap Scott Jamieson
Yes, he
here.
does. He says, so what can be done to help ensure longevity in the allele of London plane trees planted in above-grade planters with limited soil volume?
Ooh.
And there's a part two.
Whoa!
There's a part two to that as well. And what about dealing with powdery mildew in the same trees?
Well, powdery mildew is a fungus that's created by excess moisture, so you can treat that. I don't know that it has to be treated, and I guess the question is that powdery mildew or anthracnose. There's two different things, but with the limited root space, and it's a concern with plants that are grown in these above ground containers because unlike bonsais that are grown that way, bonsais you can pull out and prune the root system right and keep that tree in balance. You can't do that with large trees. So the best recommendations we have is keep that upper foliage pruned back so that you don't get too much excessive foliage on top, and try to keep that balance. So, and I don't know these particular trees if that's the case, but where we've seen success is where there's pretty intense pruning on those trees on a regular basis. You can't do the root pruning, but you can do the top pruning. And then if that soil volume gets compacted from the root system growing in there, you can go in with an air knife, which is like a high pressure airstream, and you can open up that soil a little bit and get some aeration down there.
Even in the planter.
Yeah, even in the planter. We did that at the Art Institute a number of years ago because they have honey locusts that are growing in these above ground containers. And we just went in there and loosened up that soil without damaging the root system.
We saw a demonstration of those air knives at the Bartlett Tree Research Center in North Carolina. Thank you for sending us down there. Peggy and I went this year, and I keep talking about it, and I tell people about all the cool things you guys are doing. Well, we're going to be running out of time. And by the way, Scott Stewart.
That makes no sense.
All right, we're just we're doing what we can here. We're just trying to answer questions. Let's give some general advice to folks. I know if we can get to the pawpaw, just hold us up real quick. You've got some pawpaw.
Yeah, these are just a couple of my tree friends that I think are good plants, native plants to plant. The pawpaw, which is almost a tropical looking tree. It's native to this area. Mostly though, you don't see it this far north as much as in Indiana and Michigan, and it has this unbelievable fruit called the pawpaw fruit that I was saying at one of the breaks, I had 25 pounds on my little pawpaw this year in backyard in Arlington Heights. This year, I had like a pound, and these trees will cycle their fruit production. You need a male and female, but it's a really good tree that I've not found any problems with the pawpaw. So great tree, and then also two other good.
And it's a kind of an understory tree, isn't it?
It is actually, but it grows really well in the sun. That's where it'll take off if you have.
So, but it's not going to get huge.
No, it's not going to get
grows
huge.
a little more horizontal too.
And same with the hornbeam and the hop hornbeam. Very similar trees.
You've got branches from each.
Yeah, the hornbeam tree. There's an American version and a European version. That's probably most commonly planted. It's got the wood that often people call it muscle wood. It looks like striated muscles. And then the other one is the hop hornbeam, Carpinus, which its common name is ironwood, and it has fruits this time of year that look like hops from beer hops that you would make beer out of. And they're both just great, small, good city urban trees that I would recommend. So the hornbeam or the hop hornbeam.
And they are trees that I don't think a lot of people choose very often.
No, and native trees as well, except unless it's the European version.
Those are three trees right there that you might consider.
Strongly recommend, yeah.
As we get into the fall now and the trees start to lose their leaves, people are thinking about what can I do to help my tree get through the winter? More importantly, how can I prepare it for the spring? What do you tell folks?
Well, winter is one of the best times of year to prune trees. You can prune almost all year round. There's a couple species, oaks and elms, that we don't prune until the wintertime, and that's because when you prune them during the growing season, they're more prone to diseases, Dutch elm disease with the American elm, and oak wilt with the oak tree. So winter is the best time to prune. We also see the structure of the trees a lot better during the wintertime. The trees are, quote, dormant. they take to pruning a little bit better. But pruning during the wintertime is a great thing to do. And, but we don't have to worry about moisture, it appears, going into this winter. But I always say
Well,
make
it
sure your
kind of
trees...
depends where you are.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
All right. As I mentioned, in southern and central Illinois, there are some droughty
Oh, yeah,
areas
yep.
down there. But up here on the northern tier, and this goes pretty much across the country, it's been pretty wet.
Yeah. So, but typically we say make sure those trees are going into the wintertime dormant season with good soil moisture, mulch them, those sorts of things.
What happened to the mic?
Yeah.
I didn't hear anything.
You're good?
All right. So something happened there.
Okay.
I just don't have any.
You're not hearing yourself at all?
No.
No, and I'm not hearing him through the mic either.
Oh, it's weird because I'm hearing him fine. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Just keep talking.
Yep. All right.
It sounds like it's okay.
So it's the pruning, watering, that sort of thing, mulching heading into the winter time is the best thing.
All right. Have we got any other questions there?
Nope, just a couple comments from Tom Bouchel about trees being overplanted. He says tree development takes way more time. Breeders are focused on shrubs and perennials more so because of quick turnaround for profitability. Time for releasing a new tree could be 15 to 30 years.
Mm-hmm. Yep, true.
Well, and that's a reason why you go to some of the tried and true, the natives, and get some of those planted because a lot of them aren't.
Right. And I know you've talked too about size of trees and how quickly trees recover from transplanting. I'm still a believer in that 2 to 3 inch diameter tree. You come in with a larger tree trying to get an instant landscape, that tree will sit there. And you've probably talked about the Morton Arboretum study they did years ago, which says for every inch of diameter in tree that tree is going to sit for a year. So a 5-inch diameter tree, if you plant that, it's going to take about 5 years for it to recover its root system and start growing again. It'll be fine. It'll survive. But a 2-inch diameter tree only takes about 2 years to recover its root system and really take off. And we'll often see this a 2-inch diameter tree catch up with a 5-inch diameter tree very quickly.
Yeah, and that's something you're going to pay a lot less for a 2-inch tree. And I think trees grow faster than people think. They have this idea that, Connor Shaw, you mentioned Connor Shaw, he, oaks is the one that drives him crazy because people tell him, well, I don't want an oak because it's not going to grow fast enough. He says, not the way I plant them.
Well, and the chinkapin oak, where I got from Connor, that often will flush or grow 2 times a year. So it'll push out a growth. Usually it pushes out and then it stops. It has a terminal bud. I've often seen that chinkapin oak then flush again, which you normally don't see unless you're in the South. So 2 increments of growth in 1 year. That chinkapin oak has just done fabulous. I can't talk enough about the chinkapin. I love that tree. That we should plant more of those.
Why don't you marry it if you like it so much? Okay. Sorry. My 12-year-old comes out of me every now
Don't
and then.
be a jerk.
Yeah, I know. I've got to play that for myself, right?
Come on, jerk. Seriously?
All right, there we go. That was for me. Before we go, let's do a little plug for Bartlett Tree Experts. We got about a minute here.
Yeah, Bartlett Tree Experts, third-generation family owned by the Bartlett family. A lot of people think we're from Bartlett, Illinois. We're not. It's the name comes from the Bartlett family. Been around for 110 years now.
Started out east.
Yeah, started out east. Our headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut. We've got 4 offices here in Chicago and 9 throughout the Midwest.
That's
and 130 around the world.
Yeah, you guys are not just national, you're international.
International,
And
yes.
so what you do is you go to bartlett.com and you can type in your zip code and find out where you can get an arborist representative to come out to your house and learn great stuff
Absolutely.
like about pawpaws and all kinds of great stuff. Hey, Scott Jamieson, thank you so much. What a pleasure having
Thanks,
you
Ben.
here.
Good seeing you.
All right, we'll be back.
Captain's log. Stop.
WCGO and 95.9 FM.
Your home to radio that inspires.
W240EH, Evanston, Chicago.